Salve a tutti amici di Masters of Magic, eccoci di nuovo qui per un'altra intervista con una star della magia dal congresso della magia di Saint Vincent. Questa volta siamo qui con Banachek, uno degli artisti di questo congresso. Hi Banachek, welcome to England, to Italy actually.
England? It's 1 in the morning, yes, it could be England right
yeah,
now,
that's the
couldn't
thing,
it? Yes.
yes. It's only midnight.
Teleported somewhere else.
I was just watching this thing. Why is your name on these?
George Parte, that's Banachek. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Banachek is C-E-K.
Yeah.
I'm C-H-E-K. Although a lot of people think it's C-H-E-C-K. It's not C-H-E-K. And it's just Banachek, not Steve Banachek. Some countries, they do TV shows, they call me Dave Banachek. I don't know why. It's like Madonna can have one name, but I can't. You know? But the story on this is really interesting. My real name is Steve Shaw, my born name, Stephen Shaw. And I did a lot of shows under that name. And then I started doing some shows, and I did 3 corporate shows in a row. And they would memorize everything. Always been on the Today Show, CNN Live, and they'd seen me do some things, and you know, he's done this, he's done that, and I would say, you know, please make sure you remember the name. And they would get to the name, they go, please welcome Steve. What was the last name again? Next show, same thing. I came in, I said, look, please, you know, memorize the name. Oh yeah, I've got the name, easy, Steve Shaw, no problem. And then they'd memorize all this stuff. And what it was I started thinking about, why is this happening? It happened 3 times in a row. And I realized the reason that it happened is Steve Shaw is such a common name in America. Steve, 1 syllable, Shaw, 1 syllable. So it goes right through the brain. So they didn't think they had to think about it. So when it came time being nervous on stage, they hadn't memorized it. They completely forgot it. So I wanted a name that had at least 2 hard syllables. I also wanted something that the old men remember, and that show they would remember because it was an insurance detective. So Banachek, if they hadn't seen the show, they had to say, how do you pronounce it? So they're thinking about the name. And on top of that, if they had seen the show, they were making fun of it because of the show. But after they saw me, they didn't make fun of it anymore. They, you know, they gave me the respect I deserved. So it's worked perfectly for me, and nobody's ever forgot the name.
That's very
now.
interesting because it's exactly the opposite of what Fred Capps did, who got a very short name. But tell us something about your career. I think you come to the public, public forefront in the 70s or something like that, if I'm not wrong, with something called the Project Alpha. Can you tell us about Project Alpha and how did you progress from there?
Before Project Alpha, I didn't know any magicians, didn't even do any magic. And then I picked up a book by the amazing Randy called The Truth About Uri Geller. And prior to that, everybody had told me that Uri Geller was genuine. It was real, you know, all the adults around me. So I believed in it too. And then I picked up this book, and it gave me an alternate explanation. And I went, wow. And I was a little bit upset because nobody else had ever told me that this may not be real. And so from the book, I put together a few ways to bend nails and keys, and I started fooling people with it. But I invented my own ways of doing it because there wasn't really much in the book to teach you anything. I got in a lot of trouble at school at that point. Prior to that, I was very, very shy because when I was young, I was abandoned in South Africa by my mother. I had 2 brothers, a year, 3 years old. I raised them by myself until I was 15. When I was in high school, I had 3 jobs to finish school. I was the kid in the back of the room with the heavy coat on in the middle of the hot summer, afraid that if the teacher called on me, I would turn red. I'd be embarrassed. But all of a sudden, I started doing these things, and my whole world just completely opened up. The other kids in the school were stealing the silverware from the cafeteria and bringing it to me. I got expelled from school because they were stealing the silverware. They went to plastic silverware till I graduated. I made the bell go off early one day. I got expelled from that. So I started coming up with all these amazing, unusual ways, and I didn't know any other magicians at all. So everything I did, I created, I made myself. And it wasn't until years later that I started reading books by other magicians and realized there's a whole world out there. So I'm one of the very few people who have actually come to mentalism straight from a mentalism background, going straight from mentalism. Most mentalists, they start with magic and they move into mentalism. I've always done mentalism, and then I've learned magic years later.